This video is sponsored by my Twitch channel. I stream every Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday night at 7 p.m. Eastern, and I also do bonus streams just whenever I feel like it. Be sure to check me out there if you want to see more regular content. The link's in the description. Thanks. On to the video. Despite the lack of official updates from Valve over the past nearly 3 years, Team Fortress 2 is currently experiencing a little bit of resurgence in popularity. This resurgence appears to be fueled primarily by recent community endeavors, such as the Creators.TF servers and their Half-Life event. With all these new players joining the game, and veterans rediscovering custom community maps and content, community servers are currently more popular than they've been in years, meaning now is the perfect time to play the metric ton of custom content created by the TF2 community over the past decade. However, that can sometimes be a bit of a challenge. What if you want to play a map that's rarely seen, like this one, Payload Beer Bowl? It's not present in the game, so it's not playable in casual mode, and I can't seem to find any community servers running it either. To solve this problem, I started doing something about it approximately a year and a half ago, hosting my own server and live streaming gameplay to populate it. This plan has worked fantastically, and I've been successfully able to play and help test dozens of custom maps that I'd always dreamed about playing on a full server before. With the previously mentioned resurgence of community servers and custom content for TF2, I feel the time is right. Today, I'll be teaching you how to reliably host your own Team Fortress 2 server, install custom maps, and do it all for about $5 a month. Let's get into it. For starters, I want to get this out of the way quickly. You can definitely host a TF2 server from your own computer on your own home network, completely for free. There are plenty of tutorials up online about how to install a TF2 dedicated server on Windows, and this is a great solution if you're just looking to screw around with a couple friends for an hour or two. However, this isn't a good idea in the long term. There are countless security risks. The bandwidth of home internet connections is usually super limited, and leaving your computer on all the time to host a game server tends to consume a lot of power. So, I've got a better solution. A VPS, or Virtual Private Server, is exactly what the name suggests it is. Using hosting services like DigitalOcean, Amazon Web Services, or Linode, you can create your own VPS with a limited amount of CPU cores, RAM, and storage based on a monthly fee, and then install Linux and run whatever internet-based service you want on it. When I got my first VPS from DigitalOcean, I originally only intended to host my website on it, and it was dead simple to do. Then I started thinking bigger, and now I host a TF2 server on it. And guess what? It's totally possible. For $5 a month at DigitalOcean, you're getting a VPS with a single core, a gigabyte of RAM, and 25 gigs of solid-state storage. Despite looking super underpowered, this setup actually ends up being more than enough to run a basic public TF2 server. If you're intending to run anything competitive-focused, you'll probably need a bit more power. But if all you want to do is host a pub that has custom maps, then this is perfect. Before you jump into following this guide step-by-step to create your own server, I'd recommend holding off first and watching the guide in its entirety. This'll help you make sure you know what steps are coming up next, so you're less likely to make a mistake somewhere down the line. Plus, there's a little bonus offer at the end that can help get you up and running. With all that said, let's get into it. For starters, you'll need to get set up with a provider of your choice and get a VPS. For the sake of this video, I'll be using DigitalOcean. First, select a project and create a droplet. Select Ubuntu 20.04 LTS as your distribution, or whichever Ubuntu LTS release happens to be the latest one, and choose the standard plan. Click on the left-facing arrow underneath, and then select the $5 a month option. Next, scroll down a little and select the region where you want the server to be hosted. This will have a direct impact on the ping of players who will be connecting to it, so be sure to pick the location closest to you and/or the people you plan to play with. Next, create a secure password for the root user. We're only going to be using this once. And then scroll down and choose a host name for your droplet. You can enable backups for an additional $1 per month if you wish, then click the big green Create Droplet button at the very bottom of the page. After you create your droplet, it'll take about a minute for it to initialize and install the Linux distribution you chose earlier. Once the loading bar is finished, you'll find the droplet's IP address. Copy this to your clipboard. In order to access your server, you'll need to install an application called PuTTY if you're on Windows. Once you've got PuTTY installed, open it up and paste the IP address of your server in the hostname field. If you're on macOS or Linux, enter SSH in your terminal, followed by a space and the IP address of your droplet. Once you initialize the connection, you'll be warned that the host's key could not be identified. Since this is the first time you're connecting to your droplet, this is nothing to worry about. Accept the warning, then the droplet will prompt you for a username. Enter root and press enter. Next, enter the root password you set earlier on DigitalOcean's website. You're in business. However, we need to do a couple of things before we can actually install a TF2 server on the droplet. Right now, you're logged in as the root user, which means any program you run will have full administrator level access to your droplet. In order to solve this problem before it starts, we're going to create a new user and give it the option to run specific programs as administrator instead. To add a new user, issue the command user_add_tfds, replacing tfds with the desired name of the user. To add a password for the new user you just created, use password_tfds, and then issue the command usermod-a sudo tfds. This will give that user the permission to run applications as administrator selectively. From this point onward, anytime I use tfds, it refers to your username. Now it's time to log out of the root user. There is a command to log out of root and into a new user's account, but for the sake of practice, you should close and reopen PuTTY. Enter the IP address of your droplet, and save it if you wish. Connect to the droplet, enter the username of your new user, and then the password. If you're successful, you should get into the droplet. Before doing anything else, I'd recommend switching your shell. To switch the shell to bash, use the command sudo usermod-shell/bin/bash tfds. For additional security, we're now going to disable access to the root user. This is kind of important, as it ensures that a potential hacker can't get admin level access to the droplet, assuming they find the root user's password somewhere. First, run sudo nano/etc/ssh/sshd_config. Next, hit the down arrow until you come across permit root login, and then change yes to no. Press Ctrl X, Y, and enter. Finally, enter the command sudo service sshd restart. Assuming everything went through correctly, it should now be impossible to SSH as the root user. Feel free to try this out if you wish. With that all said and done, it's time to upgrade packages, and then install the TF2 server. First, you'll need to run a couple commands with administrator privileges. This can be accomplished by the sudo command, so we'll use sudo apt-get update to update the list of installed packages, and then sudo apt-get full upgrade to upgrade them. You'll have to confirm disk usage by pressing Y in between updates and upgrades, so take note of that. With both commands finished, it's time to start installing Steam CMD and TF2. To start off, let's make a directory to store all of our TF2 related files. Enter the command sudo makedir/hl server. Once the folder's made, run the command sudo chmod775/hl server, and then the command sudo change group tfds/hl server. And now you should be able to change to it by typing cd/hl server. Now it's time to install a couple prerequisite packages, and then add the x86 architecture. Run sudo dpackage add architecture i386, and then do sudo apt-get update. Finally, run sudo apt-get install with all these package names that I can't honestly be bothered to read, and then everything should be installed and ready for Steam CMD. Download the latest Steam CMD installer by issuing the wget command, followed by the URL of the compressed file, and then use tarzxf to extract it. Now that everything's extracted and ready, it's time to create an update script. Enter nano tf2_ds.txt, and then the PuTTY window should switch to the nano text editor. Next, we're going to input a few Steam CMD commands line by line to take care of updating the server for us. First, add login anonymous, and then force install dir/hl server/tf2, and then app update 232250, and then quit. Press Ctrl X to confirm that you want to close nano, press Y to save the changes, and press enter to confirm the file name. Next, we're going to create another file to run the script. Issue the command nano update.sh, and then enter ./steamcmd.sh plus run script tf2_ds.txt. Press Ctrl X, Y, and enter to save it. Now we need to make these scripts executable. To do this, use sudo chmod +x steamcmd.sh, and then sudo chmod +x update.sh. Execute the update script, by using /update.sh. If it all went to plan, Steam CMD should start running, update, log in, and download the TF2 dedicated server without even being prompted. Since DigitalOcean droplets have a multi-gigabit download speed, you won't have to wait very long for the download to finish. Once it does, you'll be brought back to a command prompt. Now that TF2 is installed, let's create a script to run it and try it out. Enter nanotf.sh, and then enter this text on the first line. On the next line, enter all of this information. In short, this will ensure that the dedicated server runs TF2 and updates itself after a map change whenever a new patch comes out. The commands you issue after this are up to you, but for the purposes of this demonstration, I'll be using plus maxplayers24, plus map ctf24, plus svpure0. Now that you're done editing the script, press Ctrl X, Y, and enter. Now make it executable with sudo chmod plus x tf.sh, and finally, run it with /tf.sh. When the server boots up, it should start to verify the installation files, and when it's done, it should look a little bit like this. Now let's test it in-game. Start up Team Fortress 2, and open the developer console with the tilde key. Enter the command connect, followed by the IP address of your droplet, and then you should start connecting to the server. If you load it into the map you specified earlier, success! The server is working as intended. Feel free to play around with it for a bit, but we're still not finished yet. Once you're done playtesting, close TF2 and return to the PuTTY window. Since running the exit command to close the server will instead make it restart for updates, as I showed earlier, press Ctrl C to close it manually. For an extra bit of security, we're first going to enable the Firewall, which will make it impossible for outside users to connect to any ports unless otherwise specified. To allow connecting to the server for SSH, TF2, and HTTP, we're going to run the commands sudo ufw allow 22, sudo ufw allow 80, and sudo ufw allow 27015. Once this is done, run sudo ufw enable to start the firewall. Now that we've got that taken care of, it's time to start playing around with custom files. TF2 servers can host all kinds of custom game content, but adding it in from the terminal like this can be kind of time-consuming and not really friendly to new Linux users. So, we're instead going to use SFTP to transfer and edit files. Install the FileZilla program on your computer, and then connect to your server by entering the IP address, username and password, followed by port number 22. If all was successful, you should be greeted by a screen that looks something like this. First, select the HL server folder, the TF2 folder, and then the TF folder. What you're seeing right now is the game contents on the server. First, let's set up a server config and map cycle. Open the CFG folder. Next, you'll need to create your server.cfg. There are several ways to do this, and although this one is slightly out of date, I recommend the Dodbits server.cfg generator, with a few small tweaks. It's important to look through all the settings carefully, as the website hasn't been updated since 2012, and TF2 has changed a lot since then. For instance, I'd recommend turning SV max rate to 0, and turning off random damage spread. Enter the information you want to use for your server, entering this for your fastDL URL, replacing X with your droplet's IP address. Don't worry too much about this for now. I'll go into it more in depth later. Once you're all done and have the server.cfg file downloaded, all you need to do is drag and drop into the CFG folder in FileZilla. That's your server's config taken care of, mostly. There are a couple tweaks you can make to it in order to make better use of the multi-gigabit connection you have. Once you have the server.cfg file transferred over to your server, right-click on the file in FileZilla and click View/Edit. By default, this should open in your default editor for text files. If nothing happens, you can open FileZilla's settings and change it to manually open all files with Notepad, or Notepad++, or whatever text editor you want. Click View/Edit on the file again, and your server.cfg should appear in a new window. Locate SV max rate and set it to 0, if you didn't already in the Dodbits config generator. This ensures players can transfer as much data as necessary to the server. Next, scroll down to the very bottom of the file and add the command sm_cvar nb update frequency 0. This command, when combined with a source mod installation, will ensure that entities like Halloween bosses are smooth for all clients, regardless of their interp settings. Oh, and speaking of source mod, let's take care of that. Save the server.cfg file, and then click on FileZilla once more. It'll ask you if you want to re-upload the file with your changes, so click yes. If you want to create a map cycle, right-click inside the CFG directory and create a new file called mapcycle.txt. Edit the file to include a list of maps you wish to run on the server, separating them one per line. To create an MOTD that displays when a user joins the server, create a new file called motd.txt. To point it at a website, ensure the only thing present in motd.txt is a URL. If you want to just display text on the chalkboard, write text. Without any further delay, let's get to installing SourceMod. First, go up a directory by selecting the .. folder. Navigate to the Metamod source website, and download the latest Linux release version. Extract it with 7-zip, or compatible software of your choosing, and drag the add-ons folder into the TF folder of your droplet on FileZilla. If FileZilla won't let you drag and drop the add-ons folder, it means you still haven't extracted it yet. Do that, and try again if it fails. After all the files finish transferring, you should have Metamod source installed. Next up is SourceMod. Like you did with Metamod, download the latest Linux release and extract the add-ons and CFG folders to the TF folder on FileZilla. Now you'll have to wait a while for all the SourceMod files to copy. It's a pretty big plugin, so just be patient. Before we boot up the server again, it's important to add your Steam account as an administrator for SourceMod. To do this, navigate to your Droplets add-ons folder, SourceMod folder, and configs folder. Once you make it in there, right-click adminsimple.ini and click View/Edit. This is where you can add admins to your server and define what permissions they have. In order to add yourself to the list, you'll need to find your Steam ID. Visit a website like steamidfinder.com and paste your Steam profile URL, and then copy the Steam ID result. It should be the first one. Open the admin simple ini file back up, and then paste your Steam ID in the bottom of the file and put it in quotes. Press the tab key once, and then enter 99:Z in quotes to give yourself full permissions. Save the file, and re-upload it when prompted by FileZilla. Now that everything's set up for another server test, open PuTTY again, or reopen the window if you never closed it. Normally, closing PuTTY will shut down the TF2 server, but we can avoid this issue by using screen. To make a new session for TF2, use the command screen-S TF2. Once the session opens, assuming you're still in or have navigated to your HL server directory, run the command /tf.sh again to open the server. To disconnect from your session, press Ctrl-A and then D. To reconnect, use the command screen-R. Remember this information for later. Next, open Team Fortress 2 and connect to your server again with the connect command. If everything was done correctly, you should see the custom MOTD you set up, and your server's hostname should appear somewhere on the scoreboard, depending on the HUD you use. To ensure SourceMod is loaded properly, use the SM command. If this doesn't return an error, it's working. If you're not a huge fan of opening PuTTY every single time you want to issue a command to the server, it is indeed possible to run commands in the game directly. If you're an admin on the server, you should be able to use the smrcon console command to run a command on the server. This is extremely useful for changing maps, options, setting a temporary password, and stuff like that. Now you've got all the basic stuff down for running a TF2 server. Props to you! However, I know that's not all you came here for. You want to take advantage of the wealth of custom content the TF2 community has created over the past decade, right? Well, luckily, that's not difficult to do at all. Before I get into the custom stuff though, it's important that I mention you need to regularly update your server to keep it secure. To do this, log on with PuTTY periodically and use the sudo apt-get update-y sudo apt-get full-upgrade-y command. This command combines updating the list of packages and upgrading them into one, and automatically says yes to all the prompts, so it's pretty much a one-and-done solution, as long as you do it once a week or so. If you see a message when you log onto your server telling you that a system reboot is required, run sudo reboot to reboot the server. Once the server reboots, TF2 won't be running automatically. You can use cron jobs to automate it, but since I prefer having direct control over the server with SSH, I'd recommend you do the same. When your server finishes rebooting, run screen-STF2, and then cd/HL server, and finally ./tf.sh. This will run the TF2 server again, and it'll be safe to close PuTTY since the server's running in a screen session. Running workshop maps on your server especially is stupid simple. All you have to do to run a map hosted on the workshop is to change the level on your server to workshop/ followed by the ID present in the workshop item's URL. This is also a valid syntax for maps present in your map cycle, but you can just change level to the maps directly if you want to as well. However, not all custom maps are located on the workshop. There are a ton of great custom TF2 maps that were created in the era before the workshop started existing, and hosting those can sometimes be difficult for those hosting a server at home. Thankfully, the benefits provided by a VPS make it easy to host these maps. First, you'll need to install a web server on your droplet that'll be used to send out downloads to game clients. To do this, simply run sudo apt-get install apache 2. Next, open up your droplet's URL in your web browser, and you should be greeted with Apache's default page. In PuTTY, use the command sudo chmod 775-var/www/html, and then run the command sudo changegroup R tfds/var/www/html. Now open a connection to your server in FileZilla. Enter the var, www, and html folders. Assuming you set your fastdl directory the same way I showed you earlier in the video, you'll want to create a new folder called fastdl and enter it, and then create a tf directory and enter that as well. Lastly, create a maps directory and navigate into that. I know that was a lot of directory creation, but that was the last one, I promise. In this maps directory, you'll place bzip2 compressed versions of the maps you intend to run on the server. This is what gets sent to players' machines. When you download a map from the internet, you can usually get it as a zip or BSP file. If it's a zip, extract it. Once you get a plain BSP file, keep it handy, but also use a tool like 7-zip to create a bzip2 file from it. This file is what gets uploaded to the directory you just created. The BSP version of your map goes in HL server, TF2, TF, maps. If all went well, you should be able to run the change level command on your server, followed by the name of the custom map you want to run. In this example, I used my custom player destruction conversion map, PD Landfall. As you can see, the server switched to the map successfully, and my game client downloaded and extracted the bzip2 version automatically. Repeat this process for each additional non-workshop map you wish to add to the server, and add these maps to your map cycle if you wish for players to have the ability to vote for them and such. And that's the end of the guide. This single video took me probably more time to produce than anything else I've ever done in my entire life up to this point. So I hope it helps out a lot of people and keeps TF2's community growing for years to come. If you find that following the video by itself is too complicated, I wrote up a step-by-step version of the guide on my website, and you can find a link to that in the description. At any rate, I hope that you found the video interesting and helpful, and even if you don't intend to host your own TF2 server, at least now you know a little bit more about the process and general Linux stuff. If you do intend to use this guide to host your own server, I have a special referral link to DigitalOcean in the description. It'll grant you $100 in credit to use over your first month on the platform. And if you spend $25 of your own money on DigitalOcean, I'll get a matching kickback in credit to help me power my own servers and projects. This deal isn't sponsored in any way, and I'm not being paid by DigitalOcean to say anything. So you can generate your own referral link after signing up if you want to help support a friend or something. Thanks again for watching, and I hope to see you again soon.